And welcome back to the Financially Simple Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Goodbread. And yes, friends, we are going to change the narrative. It is time. I've had enough of the doom and gloom of the coronavirus. Now, look, I realize that when you're hearing this, that the world could very well be falling apart. I get that. But you know what? I've heard now for about 3 weeks in my world how bad things are. But I want to change the narrative a little bit. And I want to talk about what we can do, what we can control. So over the next course of weeks, we are going to be dealing with, let's say, a turnaround. And in order to deal with turnarounds, we have to first understand what that is. And I'm going to kind of introduce that today. But I want to deal with one of the very first points in a turnaround that we would consider. So what is a turnaround? You know, most of us in business, we were not expecting, none of us were expecting this to actually happen. We were cruising along. I mean, if we're flying a plane, we're at like 50,000 foot. And all of a sudden, the air traffic controller said, put the plane on the ground. And we like nosedive straight to the ground. And here we are in March. Sitting on the runway, really not driving. What do you mean? Well, many business owners right now are not working because of some policy, because of some fear, because of something. There's a lot of businesses across our country who are not working at this particular point. So that being said, to get that airplane back in the sky at where it was cruising at, it's going to take us some time. We're going to have to do some checklists. We're going to have to go through some processes to get us back up to that altitude where we're once again, whistling Dixie, having a good old time, eating some good Chick-fil-A sandwiches. Man, doesn't that sound good right now? Maybe even a sausage and pepperoni pizza. So in order to get there, though, friends, I want to deal with a subject that I addressed probably 3-4 weeks ago with my special guest, Matthew Bryan, talking about loss of income. Now, we were dealing specifically at that point with almost like the very entrance of this coronavirus here in our business world in the United States. But now in the last 3-4 weeks since that particular episode, which by the way, you can check it out on YouTube at Financially Simple. You can check it out on Facebook. We have it there on Justin Goodbread, on Instagram. It's all over the place. Just Google our name or financiallysimple.com. And while you're at financiallysimple.com, go to financiallysimple.com/ask Justin. Drop me a question. We're getting tons of questions coming in, which comes into the exact guest that I have today. So one of the questions that I've received a lot on is, Justin, do you have an update for us business owners as it relates to loss of income in insurance policies? And so, you know what? I reached out to a dear friend of mine and I asked my buddy to come on the show because number one, I trust him. Number two, I like the guy. Number three, I respect him deeply. I respect his values and his ethics and who he is as a father, as a husband, and as an insurance specialist. So I wanted to bring Andy, my friend Andy Huddleston, on the show today to talk about loss of income because it could very well be one of the very first points. By the way, guys, I just saw on my hand, and for those of you on YouTube, I got like this blue mark on my hand. I was probably when I was on the board earlier with another client group. But anyways, I wanted Andy to come into the show today and talk about this loss of income because it could be one of the very first points that we deal with in a turnaround, in a restarting. So let me tell you a little bit about Andy, okay? So Andy and I have known each other for years. We've been off and on connected throughout the years. A little younger than I am. He's a kid in my old book. I'm an old grandpa compared to Andy. But, I can remember myself about where Andy was a few years ago. The cool thing about Andy is he has been a certified commercial lines coverage specialist. Basically, what that means is he knows his stuff, and he's worked for greater than a decade. Now, that's a huge deal if you know insurance. A lot of people jump into insurance. I'm trying to make a quick commission, and they jump out. Not so here, my buddy. He's been over a decade dealing with commercial insurance. He is a father of 3 of the most beautiful kids. He loves woodworking. I've seen some of the woodwork he does around his house when he shares it on social media. And the cool thing that I'm excited about for Andy and some of the other things I know that we're not going to share on the show here today is that he is trying or soon will become one of the equity owners of the company he works with. So with that introduction, Andy, man, glad to have you on the show today.
Justin, thanks. Yeah, I've listened to a whole lot of podcasts and never been on one. So, here it goes. We'll see what happens.
Well, you know what? If you're a rock star at this, which I have a feeling you will be, perhaps it might be time for the Andy Huddleston podcast. What do you think?
I don't know about that. Maybe when my kids get a little older,
Yeah, I know. It's hard being a dad, an insurance specialist, a business owner, soon to be business owner. I mean, you work with a ton of business owners across the country, across East Tennessee and various states. What is What are you seeing from your eyes through your lens right now? Some of the key questions or some of the struggles or some of the concerns that business owners are wrestling with at this time?
And so for much of the last really 3 weeks, my days has been sorry, my internet connection says it's unstable. Let me know if you can't hear me. I've been on the phone for just hours every day with individual business owners and listening to their stories, and to varying degrees of, we have 0 sales overnight to we're 50% down, 80% down, or we're rocking along. It's just everything in between. Most everybody, it seems like, is down at least a little, and we're in the battle with everybody in that. And so there's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of can insurance help me through this? Is there anything that I'm not thinking about, Andy, that we can kind of get through 2 or 3 months? So those are the questions we've been fielding pretty much on a daily basis for the last 3 weeks.
Andy, one of the biggest questions, and I'm telling you, man, on the www.financiallysimple, how old am I that I'm still saying www. I mean, think about that, friends. I realized my daughter turned 15 today, Andy. I woke up early and I sang happy birthday to her live on Facebook, and I sound like a dying goat. It's really bad, but I'm still saying www. No, but on financiallysimple.com/ask Justin. Again, financiallysimple.com/ask Justin. One of the number one questions I'm getting, Andy, is, what's the loss of income rider that you and Matthew Bryan were talking about, and do you have any updates? So let's do the who, what, when, where, how, why, how approach to this particular strategy to try to educate folks, and then to try to point them in the direction that they can prosper or utilize this type of coverage. So let me ask you this question. First of all, what is loss of income?
Yeah, so real simply, loss of income is if there is a covered loss that happens at your business, and because of that loss, you cannot operate. So insurance would pay you for the time that you're down, the income you could have and should have been receiving for all those months. So a real simple 30,000 foot view example is if your building has a fire and literally it's condemned by the city or state or whoever, you can't come in and you can't operate. So in modern, this may be this is jumping into not every client of ours has it. It's an extra, it's not given, right? So many do. The ones that don't are take like a real estate firm. If all of their people are able to work remote and their office burns down, they're still able to operate. But a manufacturer who produces something at their office, if the machines get damaged or the building gets damaged and they can't come in, they can't produce their product. So they would have it.
So let me ask you this, and I'm trying to lay these questions out for you in such a way to help it be easy for the listeners, both on the audio format, whether it's Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, or whether it's on YouTube as they're watching us to go through this. You said it's an addition, so I'm assuming it's part of the business insurance package, maybe a rider that you add to it, or is it a supplement?
We call it an endorsement, but it's not given normally. Like, so some business policies, like a business owner policy, that's usually for maybe businesses 5-10 million in sales and under, it might be thrown in. But a lot of times, if it's a manufacturer or a bigger business, they would have to buy it extra. And again, it's what we've learned through this last 3 weeks. It's intimately tied with property. So if your building gets damaged, car drives through it, tornado, fire, things like that, that's what we call a trigger, and then business income kicks in after that initial event.
Okay, so let me see if I'm with you so far. Okay, so I'm a business owner. You laid out a number there. So the average business owner is based on our demographics of the show, and we're talking hundreds of thousands of people listening to the show. The average business owner is producing less than $5 million in revenue who listen to the show. So that being said, they probably didn't buy it extra. Did I hear you correctly that it could be included in a baseline policy of theirs at this point?
So yeah, without getting into a whole, there's a type of policy called a BOP, a business owner's policy, and those are not every industry is not. What would you call it? Not every industry is a good candidate for a BOP or a business owner's policy. Usually, like white collar things, sales organizations, retail shops, those things are a BOP type policy. So on a BOP, business income's thrown in. If it's not on a BOP, if it's on a traditional, what we call a package policy, where you have your property policy, then your liability policy separate, you would have to buy it extra most of the time.
Okay, so I'm going to keep building my snowman, so to speak, right? So what we're looking for is it's an income rider, loss of income rider, or an endorsement is the term you use. If we're less than $5 million in annual sales, and it traditionally is someone like me in the financial world, maybe a white collar, a lot of our entrepreneurial doctors will have this on their BOP policy, things of that nature. Is it added, or is it placed as an endorsement at the time of issuance of that coverage? Is that when it comes into place?
Normally that's when we would add it, but you can add it midterm. You could add it anytime throughout the year, and it comes in one of two ways. You can pick a limit. I want $500,000 of business income coverage, $200,000, whatever. Or on those BOP policies, they usually come what we call actual loss sustained. So for 12 months generally is the term. Whatever your actual loss is of business income, so it's uncapped. So there's not a limit. So that's the better version for most people of the type of coverage. But in a lot of businesses, again, any sort of thing where you make a product, a manufacturer or a machine shop, or even like a distributor, those policies, you usually have to pick a limit. So normally what our conversations are with clients is, how long do you think, if a tornado knocked your building down, how long are you going to be out? Do you need 6 months? Do you need 2 months? How quickly can you go rent a building? How quickly can you get your product shipped to the new building? And generally, this is an overgeneralization. Most people settle on, man, if you gave me 4 months, I could get back up and running somehow.
Okay. So now that we have a kind of a baseline, I've heard, again, I hear lots of things in my world. I've heard that a lot of the policies, especially BOPs and things of that nature, are not positioned to provide loss of income due to natural disasters. Is that correct?
Are you are you considering COVID a natural disaster? You talking like hurricanes, tornado kind of natural disaster?
Yes, maybe.
Yes, and yes, and yes. Okay, so it's different. So again, what we've learned through this is business income must have that trigger. There must be a current, what would you call it? A covered loss that the policy would already cover before business income is going to come into play. So if there's not that first event, business income can't trigger into coverage. So with a tornado, wind is normally covered. Business income would come into play. With COVID, with coronavirus, oftentimes there is no provable property damage. And that's what's been so difficult. And there's only a handful of case studies out there, and I think they happened in restaurants, where somebody came in with like a bacterial disease, and the CDC or whoever realized it, they followed the track of that person, and they shut that business down for like a week's time so that they could clean it. Those businesses were eligible for business income, but with this coronavirus, because there's no property damage, so far, most every carrier that we know of are denying these claims.
So we had in our previous guest that was talking about this, he made the statement that you need to talk to your insurance agent, and that was kind of bashed around a little bit. Let's lay the question then. If somebody believes they have a claim for whatever reason, they can say maybe some property damage or something happened, they believe they have a claim. How would they go about trying to figure out if they have a claim?
Yeah, so what we've told all our clients, which I know there's different takes on this, is if your business is basically shut down at this point or significantly slowed down, we've advised them to file claims no matter what. So there's a couple of reasons for that. Is we want to get in early to the insurance companies before they get a bevy of 3 million claims filed, so they've already gotten a relationship with an adjuster. If anything changes down the road, they're already in the system. And so we've kind of prepared them that right now, as things stand on the 9th of April, probably these claims are going to all be denied. that could change in a month from now. Like Justin and I were talking on a different group yesterday, a networking group. We're starting to, I've seen 4 articles at this point by very reputable. One was the Insurance Journal, one was the Wall Street Journal. I forget what the other 2 were, but it is begun. There's a pattern developing that if the government continues to squabble over how to help small businesses get money during this coronavirus situation, one of the talking points has recently been, even though the insurance companies weren't set up to pay these claims, that's not the way these policies were designed. The government may kind of force them to, is what these articles are saying. That's what some of the lawmakers are asking. Is that even possible? I guess anything's possible, but that's another reason why we're saying get your claim in. It might be a no today, but 3 months from now it might be a yes. And again, you want to get in early so that if whatever matriculates down the line, you've already got a relationship with the adjuster and the insurance company to pick it back up 3 months from now if something like that were to happen.
Now, to play devil's advocate, because I love doing this and I like putting my guests in the hot seat occasionally, those individuals who maybe have a history of claims, if they file yet another claim on something that is maybe not absolute, they can't see the damage and they have a tendency that they think it's going to be denied, do they run the risk of a cancellation of coverage at some point, a jacking up of their rates and price points? Do they run a risk of this claim that they potentially know may be denied from coming back and biting them somehow in the future? Right.
So my gut feeling is no. If there's going to be a zero payout, then they shouldn't be worried about anything like that. Plus, again, you probably get some different opinions if you talk to other people. Every insurance company we're talking to right now, their new business opportunities are severely down. So I got an email today, and insurance companies lowering rates. We'll get into some of the stuff insurance companies are doing, but I think they're going to do everything they can to keep what they got in the next 3 or 4 months. I think they're going to dig in and try to keep everything they have, no matter how they're going to get creative to do that. But I think, these are huge companies, hundreds of millions in sales. They do not want to go significantly down right now. So I would not worry about that. If your business is severely hurt, I would try to file a claim.
So we're dealing with Andy's perspective here, friends. Like we always say, this is educational purposes only, and you have a group of advisors around you. And if you run to your insurance agent and they say, we're not going to do that, just say, what the famous Andy Huddleston said, that I need to do this.
I heard him on a podcast, so he must be famous,
No, so let's change the gear a little bit, because you answered my question, who, when, why, how, of the loss of income riders. But let's talk about this insurance world. I know you and I follow this world greatly. I deal with it from the investing side, making sure that clients who have pension plans, things of that nature, they're positioned properly. But man, first of all, this idea that the government's going to come in and say, insurance, you have to cover something you weren't prepared for, man, don't you? And this is an opinion, right? And everybody has one. We all know they're kind of like a belly button. They stink, right? So wouldn't that cause some severe harm to the insurance company's balance sheets and the way they do business if the government were to force them to do that?
Yeah, so it didn't come up in our previous discussion. It was just about business income, but almost all these policies have virus exclusions too. So, and that's on the property exclusion list, right? So there'll be 4 or 5 exclusion: war, mold, virus, bacteria exclusions, right? So there's a couple ways that these policies aren't responding to this, and they weren't intended to, right? So, yeah, so there's a lawsuit right now, a class action lawsuit in Canada that's brand new, where they're suing the 10 biggest insurance companies, saying that coronavirus should be considered a property damage thing because it's infected the offices of somebody touching keyboards, turning door handles. If we can prove somebody that had the coronavirus came, then that ought to qualify for property damage. So who knows, right? If these insurance companies have to pay, and just for like a small sample size of what it could do to the insurance industry, is they said Canada's total restaurant gross sales is $60 billion. The United States has significantly higher, sales than that. So they're saying if you just take a few months and just say take 10%, $6 billion. that insurance companies weren't planning on having to pay, that could severely hurt their balance sheets, right? So so if we play this out, if the government makes this happen, which again, if they can't figure it out in Congress, the longer this goes, I think the more of a possibility insurance companies become the vehicle to help small business. Then insurance companies probably have to get bailed out. They almost all go bankrupt, and then their premiums would probably triple or double in the next couple of years just to try to make back up. But if that's the quickest way to help small business, what on the flip side of that is these insurance companies already have relationships with small business. So the way to get money to the small business owner, they already have a policy with them. So we'll see. I have no idea, but my gut is the longer this goes, that we can't help small businesses out, the more likely insurance becomes a vehicle that might be the answer.
Yeah, no, friends, a lot of this is conjecture at this point. A lot of this is just thinking.
Right.
I mean, this is not saying this is absolutely going to happen, but what we can deal with is what trends we are seeing. We can deal with those leading indicators in the insurance world. And I've seen a couple of trends, which I don't have much hair on my head, friends, but I've scratched my head saying, man, that's interesting. Why are they doing that? What's the thought behind that? So I'm sure you've been tracking some current trends as well. What are you seeing from your perspective of some trends that the insurance companies are taking, even yet present in the midst of this turmoil that we're in?
Yeah, so great question. We're seeing kind of unprecedented things, right? So first is almost every insurance company that we're dealing with is, if you're in a tight spot, they are being very forgiving about your bill payments right now. So if they need to extend it, if they need to lessen it, they're willing to hear you out. And some have even just said, almost like some banks have, you hear rumors of all this, like, don't worry about paying some premium for a couple months. So that is allowing, we hope, companies to limp along for a few months and then, pick back up when the economy or sales kind of start picking back up. So that's one trend. Another trend is for restaurants. Again, almost every insurance company that we represent is doing some version of this. So delivery, like a Domino's business, Papa John's business, the delivery portion was always a very expensive insurance coverage. And a family sit-down restaurant that did very little delivery didn't have it. Well, now these insurance companies are basically giving it for free to encourage people to stay in business. If you need to not open your dining room, but get your food out somehow, they're going to add we call it hired non-owned auto. They're going to let your employees go deliver food, and they would cover a claim if they were on the clock. So that's another trend. A third trend, we represent a carrier that only writes restaurants. So they're in the thick of it, just like all the restaurants are. And they've forgiven payments right now. They've added the delivery. They've been so good about getting resources out to insureds, about filing claims, they're just things that had never have happened before, So those are some of the trends. What we're doing is, if you're a business that 50% of your sales are gone, we are kind of the Band-Aid trick is your premium is based on sales or payroll. So we're lowering sales and payroll to let your insurance premiums over the next few months be significantly less. So if you have $1 million of sales, we're taking your sales down to like 300, 400,000 for the year, and your premiums every month are significantly lower. So we're doing everything we can to help small business owners, grit through it also.
So, Andy, what is the one tip you would give business owners right now who maybe have a, great relationship with their insurance agent? Should they be calling their insurance agent and asking for what right now?
Yeah. So just like somebody with their bank who's continued to pay their bills, right? And the bank has a good relationship with them. If somebody has to choose between payroll and insurance and they just, man, what do I do? Calling your agent and, getting in touch with your insurance company. If you've been a kind of a model client of theirs, they are going, like I told you, they're doing everything they can to keep business. So they will probably work with you if you just call. So I would say, don't be afraid to make that call. We're getting calls all the time. If you can't pay, If you need to take vehicles off, if you need to get creative about your premium, now's the time to do it, because insurance companies aren't going to question it. They're going to try to keep your business. They want to support you in business. They're going to do just about everything they can.
Andy, that's been a lot of good information. I'm going to ask you a question. You may know this is coming. You may not know. I don't know if you've listened to any of the shows here recently, but I have a question that I've been asking everybody as the very last question of the episode. I'm going to ask you the question. I'm going to talk to give you a chance to think about it. Okay. If you had one and only one pearl of wisdom to give out to people that are listening to your voice today, it doesn't have to be about insurance. It could be about anything underneath the sun. I'm going to ask you, what is that one pearl of wisdom that you would say, hey, listen to me on this. This is my opinion. This is what I want to leave you with. The reason why I say that is because one of my fears I have, friends, is the cemetery. I'm not scared of dying. I know whenever I leave this earth that I'll see my maker. I can't wait for that day. Even today, if that were to happen, so be it. But one of the things that's sad to me is how many people leave this world with such wisdom and they never share it and they never pass it on. And I always like to hear, what is that one pearl of wisdom that we were to share out today that we could say that Andy Huddleston left all? He gave us his best stuff. So, buddy, I'm going to ask you, what is that one thing? I'm going to ask you to bring it. What's that one thing that you want to let people know from Andy Huddleston's mind and heart?
You may consider this dodging the question, but I don't think so. So it's not necessarily a nugget of wisdom. So I'll just give you my last 3 weeks in summary, right? The first week of all this, I'm not generally an anxious person, but I was anxious, right? And I thought, man, we all got to stay at home, and all these business owners are calling me and they're hurting and I'm hurting and I'm working all the time trying to help them, but there's no end in sight, right? And I was watching every presidential, anything that anybody was doing to try to get any bit of information. And as time has gone on, I will say this: there overwhelmingly 90+% of the people, even in very, very dire straits right now, there's hope and there's positivity. I do not sense despair. I sense that, hey, this is a kind of unprecedented worldwide thing. Like, I had a guy who owns a restaurant in Myrtle Beach and they have no sales and he's basically had to shut down. And he's like, man, I went for a walk on the beach with my wife in the spring and nobody else was on the beach. It was awesome. And I'm like, in the midst of their business being in turmoil, right? And he's counting his blessings. I told you, Justin, I've never enjoyed spring so much. Like, I've noticed every flower. So, so my takeaway has been overwhelmingly, there's hope, even in the midst. Like in the 2008, 2009 thing, I was just kind of getting into working a little bit there. I felt there was despair. And in this, I feel like it's not near the despair. And that gives me hope. Like, everybody's ready to grind through this and work together and help whoever needs help get it, and that encourages me for the next few months, whatever that looks like. That's not wisdom, but I feel like I'm talking to 100 people in the last couple of weeks, right? There seems to be a lot of positive, like, I would never choose this kind of attitude, but I'm going to get through it and we'll figure it out. We're going to come back stronger. And that's a good thought.
Andy, thanks for being on the show today. Where would people go to find you information about you?
So WyattInsurance.com, www.WyattInsurance.com. And there's a lot of information there about insurance, about us, about basic insurance things. And then just if you wanted to email me or LinkedIn me, I have an active LinkedIn profile, Andy Huddleston. And then Andy at Wyatt Insurance is my email, Andy at WyattInsurance.com.
Andy, thanks for joining me on the show today and dealing with this most interesting question about what is loss of income rider, and can we go into a deeper dive on that? Thank you, everybody, for your time today.
Yes, sir. We'll talk soon.
Hey, guys, look, as I always say every week, life is hard, life is good, life can be frustrating, money doesn't have to be. We're going to continue to make our lives at least financially simple, and you've got to go out and make it. I mean, take a walk down the beach if you live near the beach. Think about that. I mean, that's amazing to me. You got to go out and make it a great day. Y'all take care.